Hello there, welcome back. Today, in under 5 minutes, I will show you how to build and fly a plane in Assemble VR. I will show you everything you need to know to get started here. So we're going to start by building the fuselage. I'm going to take a few flat plates out of the dispenser, and this will be the main body of our plane. Next, we take the larger wing from the dispenser menu, and we copy it once and put one wing on either side. And then we take the smaller wing and we put it on the back of the plane, and we actually want 3 separate wings here, one on either side and one in the middle. All of these wings are very important to steering our plane, and I'll show you how they work in a second. And just like that, the body of our plane is done. The next step is to add motors to the front with propellers to provide thrust. Now I'm actually going to add 2 different types of propellers. The first is red and the second is blue. The only difference between them is the pitch. The pitch of the propeller tells you which way the thrust will move when you spin it. And what we want here is to actually spin one of the motors in an opposite direction. And this is because in real life, motors provide an equal and opposite torque onto the body of the plane, and we want to cancel this torque out by the other rotation of the motor. It will cancel out that torque, and we won't have to worry about any other forces on the plane. As you can tell, Assemble actually has very realistic physics. So this plane will be very similar to one you would make in real life. The next step is to add wheels to the bottom to roll across the ground and give ourselves enough time to gain speed and take off, or to also safely land the plane at the end. Use the colored pencil to change the material of any of the parts, and I do this to give the tires a rubbery material instead of the metal one that I had when I imported them. All that's missing is to add a driver's seat to the top of the plane, and we're ready to fly it. Well, that's not necessarily true, because we still need one important step in order to actually fly the plane, and that is to program it. You see, in Assemble, you are able to control how the devices respond to the input that you give it from the game controller. In other words, you're able to program these devices to behave however you want. Here I am programming the motors to spin the propellers, and as I mentioned before, I am making the left motor turn clockwise and the right motor turn counterclockwise. Now you may notice that these wings actually have flaps on them. The larger wings have 2 flaps each, and the smaller wings have 1. To program these, I go into the Wing tab. I'm able to specify how each of these flaps behave when flying the plane. The outer flaps of the large wings, I want to define the roll of the plane. In other words, how the plane leans left and right. I want both the left and the right flaps to move down. And the reason they're both moving down is because one is flipped over the other. The inner flaps I want to act as brakes, so I'm going to lift them up and down using the X and Y buttons on the controller. Brakes are pretty important on the plane as well, because if you deploy these brake flaps, it'll actually add resistance to the plane and help push you into the ground as you're landing. I'm telling one flap to move in the opposite direction of the other, and that's again because I want both flaps to move in the same direction now, but one of the wings is flipped upside down. Now these smaller wings in the back, I want to control the pitch and yaw of the plane. So let's start with pitch. Pitch defines how the plane will move up and down in the air. I'm going to use the vertical component of the right stick, and I'm going to control the 2 flaps in the back with this right stick. Now the last flap will control the yaw of the plane, which is how the plane tilts left and right in the air, and I'm going to use the right component of the right stick to control this flap. So here I am programming this last flap. I'm simply visualizing how I'm moving the controller and how I want the flap to respond. And now we're ready to test all of the inputs on the controller. So I click Simulate, and as you can see, when I pick up the controller and move the sticks around, the back and the front flaps move according to how we programmed them. Everything looks good, except when I press X and Y, you can tell that the brake flap does not go back to the center point, and that's because I didn't define any button to bring the flaps back to 0. So I go out of the simulation, and I go back into the programming window, and I add the B button that will set the angle to 0 when I press it. So congratulations, you have now made a plane in Assemble in under 5 minutes. Now let's go have some fun. Teleport onto the driver's seat to get a first-person view of your vehicle. or control it from the ground. But be careful, if your plane crashes into the ground, it can shatter into pieces. Thanks for watching this build video. Assemble VR is perfect for gamers who love hands-on challenges, hobbyists exploring their creative potential, and future engineers wanting to hone their problem-solving skills. Subscribe for more content on VR gaming, plane building, and virtual engineering. Hit like and comment with your dream VR project.